Welcome to the world of medieval cuisine, a time when food wasn't just about taste. It was about survival, status, and sometimes sheer weirdness. Today, we're diving deep into the bizarre foods that medieval people ate. And trust me, some of these will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about history. To understand why medieval food was so strange, we need to step back in time. This was an era before refrigeration, global trade, or even basic hygiene by today's standards. Most people lived hand to mouth, relying on whatever grew locally or could be preserved through harsh winters. But for the wealthy, their tables were a whole different story. Medieval Europe wasn't exactly known for its culinary finesse. In fact, it was a time when people ate whatever they could get their hands on, and sometimes that meant some truly bizarre foods. From roasted dormice to bread made from tree bark, the medieval diet is full of surprises that might make your stomach churn or spark curiosity about how resourceful and desperate our ancestors really were. Today, we're diving into 10 strange but surprisingly common dishes that medieval people actually ate. These aren't just random oddities. They reflect how people survived, thrived, and even celebrated during one of history's most fascinating periods. 1. Dormice, the original fancy rodent. Let's start with something small but not so insignificant. Dormice, those cute little critters you might see scurrying around in modern cartoons, were considered a delicacy in ancient Rome and spilled over into parts of medieval Europe. Wealthy households would fatten them up in special clay jars called gleraria, feeding them nuts, fruits, and grains until they were plump enough to roast. Once cooked, these rodents were often seasoned with honey, spices, and herbs before being served at banquets as a symbol of luxury. Imagine biting into a honey-glazed dormouse while sipping wine. It's either horrifying or oddly appetizing depending on your perspective. But why dormice? Well, for starters, they were easy to trap and breed. Plus, their fatty bodies provided much-needed calories during lean times, while peasants probably didn't have access to this gourmet dish. The idea of eating rodents wasn't foreign to them either. If you lived in a world where food shortages were common, anything with meat on its bones became fair game. 2. Black pudding, blood sausage that stuck around. Next up is black pudding, a dish that has thankfully stuck around in various forms across cultures today. But let's be honest. If someone handed you a plate of congealed pig's blood mixed with oatmeal and fat back then, you'd probably think twice before digging in. Medieval cooks had no qualms about using every part of an animal, including its blood. This practice wasn't just practical. It was rooted in necessity. Blood spoils quickly, so turning it into sausage ensured nothing went to waste. The process involved catching fresh blood during slaughter, mixing it with filler ingredients like barley or breadcrumbs, and stuffing the mixture into intestines or stomach linings. After boiling or frying, the result was a dense, iron-rich sausage that packed a punch both in flavor and nutrition. It may sound gross now, but black pudding was a lifesaver for families who needed hearty meals to fuel long days of labor. 3. Garham, fish sauce fit for emperors. If you've ever tried Asian fish sauce, you'll understand the polarizing nature of garum, the Roman condiment that remained popular throughout the Middle Ages. Made by fermenting fish guts, yes, guts, with salt and spices, Garham had a pungent smell that could clear a room faster than a skunk. Yet despite its odor, it was beloved by everyone from emperors to peasants because of its umami-packed flavor. Medieval cooks used garum to enhance stews, soups, and sauces. It added depth to bland grain-based dishes and gave vegetables a savory kick. Think of it as the ketchup of the medieval era, except way more potent. And while the recipe varied depending on region and available ingredients, the basic principle stayed the same. Take something slimy, let it rot just enough, and voila, you've got yourself a flavor bomb. 4. Pottage, the ultimate peasant stew. Now, onto something less exotic but equally important. Pottage. This humble stew was the backbone of the medieval diet, especially among the lower classes. Essentially, it was a thick soup made from whatever scraps people could scrape together. Vegetables, grains, herbs, and occasionally bits of meat or bone broth if you were lucky. Onions, leeks, cabbage, and turnips were staples, along with barley or oats for bulk. What made pottage bizarre wasn't necessarily its ingredients, but rather its consistency. Cooked slowly over an open fire, the mixture would thicken into something resembling porridge. Families often kept a pot simmering continuously, adding new ingredients as they became available. Over time, layers of flavors melded together, creating a dish that was both comforting and adaptable. Sure, it wasn't glamorous, but it kept millions alive during harsh winters and crop failures. 5. Bread made from tree bark. When wheat was scarce, medieval bakers got creative. One particularly unusual solution involved grinding tree bark into flour to stretch limited supplies of grain. Birch bark, in particular, was prized for its mild flavor and nutritional benefits. When dried and pulverized, it could be mixed with rye or barley flour to produce a coarse, dark bread that was better than going hungry. This practice wasn't limited to desperate times either. Some regions embraced bark bread as a regular part of their diet, believing it offered health benefits like improved digestion. Of course, modern science tells us that tree bark contains fiber and antioxidants, so maybe they were onto something after all. Still, the thought of chomping down on a slice of bark bread might leave you reaching for a baguette instead. 6. Cockantress, a feast fit for kings. For those who could afford extravagance, there was Cockantress, a surreal hybrid creature created by sewing the upper half of a pig onto the lower half of a chicken or turkey. This grotesque yet impressive dish was designed to wow guests at royal feasts. Cooks would roast the two halves separately, then stitch them together using string or skewers before presenting the finished product on a silver platter. While Cockantress might seem like pure novelty, it also showcased the medieval obsession with transformation and spectacle. Food wasn't just sustenance, it was entertainment. And what could be more entertaining than serving your guests a mythical beast straight out of a fairy tale? 7. Haggus, Scotland's iconic dish. Though haggis is still enjoyed today, its origins lie firmly in the medieval period. Traditionally made by stuffing sheep's offal, heart, liver, lungs, into the animal's stomach along with oats, onions, and spices, haggis was a clever way to utilize every part of the animal. Boiled until tender, the resulting dish was rich, flavorful, and surprisingly filling. To outsiders, haggis might sound unappetizing, but for medieval Scots, it was a source of pride. Its simplicity and efficiency embodied the rugged spirit of the Highlands. Even Robert Burns immortalized it in his poem, Address to a Haggus, ensuring its legacy would endure for centuries to come. 8. Blancmange. Not your grandma's dessert. Blancmange, meaning white food, was a sweet treat unlike anything you'd find in modern dessert cases. Originally made from shredded chicken breast, almond milk, rice, and sugar, this dish blurred the line between savory and sweet. Medieval chefs strained the mixture through cheesecloth to achieve a silky texture, then molded it into decorative shapes before serving. Over time, blancmange evolved into a purely sweet dish, losing its poultry component altogether. But imagine explaining to your dinner guests that their creamy almond pudding once contained chicken. It's the kind of trivia that makes history deliciously weird. 9. Beaver Tale, the monk's loophole. During Lent, Christians were required to abstain from eating meat. However, clever monks found a loophole. Since beavers spent so much time swimming, they argued that the animals were more fish than mammal. This allowed them to feast on beaver tails without violating religious rules. Rich in fat and collagen, beaver tails were roasted or fried and served as a decadent substitute for red meat. While this logic might seem questionable, it highlights how flexible medieval interpretations of dietary laws could be. After all, when hunger strikes, you find ways to justify indulgence, even if it means reclassifying furry rodents as aquatic creatures. 10. Ale Poset, drinkable medicine. Finally, we arrive at ale Poset, a warm, frothy drink made by curdling spiced milk with hot ale, often sweetened with honey or flavored with cinnamon and nutmeg. Posets were consumed as both a beverage and a remedy for colds and digestive issues. The curdled milk floated on top of the liquid, creating a custard-like layer that drinkers scooped up with spoons. Posets eventually inspired eggnog, proving that even the strangest medieval concoctions can evolve into beloved holiday traditions. Still, the idea of drinking curdled milk might take some getting used to. Finally, curiosity. The medieval period was a melting pot of cultures, thanks to the Crusades and expanding trade networks. Exposure to new ingredients and cooking techniques sparked a spirit of experimentation. Why settle for plain bread when you can bake it with rose water or serve it alongside spiced wine? In short, medieval cuisine wasn't random. It was a reflection of the times. Every dish told a story, whether it was about survival, faith, or exploration. But not everything about medieval dining was glamorous. In fact, some aspects were downright dangerous. Poor sanitation meant that foodborne illnesses were rampant. Rotten meat, contaminated water, and spoiled grains led to outbreaks of disease. Ergot, a fungus that grows on rye, caused hallucinations, convulsions, and even death. Many historians believe it contributed to the hysteria surrounding witch trials in Europe. And let's not forget the toxic properties of certain ingredients. Lamprey blood, if consumed raw, could poison diners. Yet, the allure of novelty outweighed the risks for many. It was a gamble, one that sometimes ended tragically. Even luxury items like sugar, which symbolized wealth, came with consequences. Overconsumption led to tooth decay, a painful reminder of excess. The darker side of medieval feasts serves as a cautionary tale. Sometimes, the pursuit of extravagance and innovation has unintended consequences. From dormice to tree bark bread, Medieval cuisine was a testament to human ingenuity and adaptability. Whether driven by necessity, creativity, or sheer extravagance, these bizarre foods offer a glimpse into a world where survival often depended on thinking outside the box or the kitchen. So next time you sit down to a meal, spare a thought for those who came before us. Think about the stories behind your meal. Their culinary experiments may seem strange, but they paved the way for the diverse and delicious diets we enjoy today. You might find yourself inspired by the bizarre brilliance of medieval cuisine. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. What's the weirdest thing you've ever eaten?